Hey, welcome to ARDEX's Ask the Expert. My name is Craig Morris, Business Development Manager for ARDEX Surfaces, and we are here today talking about ARDEX K523. This is actually part two of a two-part video. Our first video was talking about the different water ratios for the ARDEX K523. Get a lot of questions from the field. Why do we have two different water ratios? Basically, the differences in the water ratios are twofold. Number one, the lower water ratio allows you to place the material with a heavier slump that allows the aggregate to stay very high in the mix. That makes it very easy to cut. The aggregate reveal on the lower water ratio is much quicker, much easier. One of the drawbacks, though, is that you do get a little bit of reduced coverage on 520s with the lower water ratio. The higher water ratio is going to be very familiar to most of you out there who've worked with self-levelers in the past. It's a very fluid mix. It's very easy to place. The problem is you got to dig a little bit deeper to find that aggregate. So what you end up with is a finished look that has a little bit less of a uniformity. So with the original pour that we did about a week ago, you can see right off the bat here, on my left here, you're going to see the ARDEX K523 at the lower water ratio, and on the right, it's at our higher water ratio. Right off the bat, you can see that you have a definite difference in color. The higher water ratio has a little bit more polymer flow going on, which gives it a little lighter color. The one thing you may not be able to pick up on the video, but if you were able to feel it, the texture of the K523 lower water ratio, it has a stippled or dimpled appearance to it, and it also has a texture to it, almost, I don't want to say rough, but it definitely has a definitive texture to it. Whereas with the 523, the higher water ratio, it looks more like the traditional self-levelers with a glass-like appearance and very smooth. With the lower water ratio and that dimpled or textured appearance or surface, that indicates that the aggregate is right below the surface. So that's what I want to see when I go to cut it. It's going to open up much easier that way. Right. So this is our first cut, and this is where we start to see the real differences between the lower and the higher water ratio. You can see with our first cut on the lower water ratio, we get a nice even aggregate reveal. The black and white aggregates pop in very evenly, very uniformly throughout the mix. Whereas with the higher water ratio, you can see we got some white aggregates starting to appear, a little bit of black aggregate, but not nearly as much. So you can also see with both, whether it's the higher or lower water ratio, the metals that we use to cut this with our initial pass, they don't leave a real deep scratch pattern. This makes it very beneficial for us as we progress up through the transitionals into the polish, that we don't leave any scratch patterns in the material. It makes it much easier to get a nice polish on it. So we've removed our chipboard here. You can see we actually have our second cut going on here. And our second cut is what we call the honing phase. This is done with our ceramic transitionals. You can see that all the scratches that were introduced by the metal cut are basically removed. I mean, they're gone. So at this point, you could literally, if you were doing a grind and seal and putting a film forming sealer over the surface, this would be suitable to receive a film forming sealer. You can see that, again, with the lower water ratio, much nicer reveal of the aggregate, much more uniform. Starting to get a little bit more reveal on the aggregate with our ceramics on the higher water ratio, but still not to the same level as we got with the lower water ratio. So we've completed our honing phase, removed all the scratches. And again, as I said earlier, we can actually apply a film forming sealer over our material at this point. However, if we want to increase a little bit of our abrasion resistance of the material, as well as give it a little bit more of a color pop, we can densify it. And that's actually what we did on this third phase here. We've actually densified the material and then went over it with a 200 polishing pad. Did the same thing on the lower water ratio here as on the higher water ratio here. You can see the actual polish pad did actually get some more reveal in the higher water ratio mix. However, it still is very spotty, not nearly as revealing and uniform as we have with the lower water ratio. So to summarize, I think you can see the benefits of each product, particularly if you view the first video, and you can see how the material flows in terms of the higher water ratio versus the lower water ratio. And it's just going to come down to the expectations you set for your customer on what the finished floor is going to look like. And again, I can't emphasize enough the importance of doing a mock-up for that purpose. Lower water ratio will give you aggregate reveal. It's going to be higher. It's going to be a little bit harder to find. You're going to have to dig for it a little bit deeper, and you're going to get more of a spotty reveal. Now, some folks love that look. That look as the actual true look of a true full polished surface. Most concrete floors, if you're polishing the slab, it's not going to give you an even aggregate reveal throughout. So a higher water ratio, that'll serve that purpose. It gives it a true polished concrete look. Whereas with the lower water ratio, with a much more even reveal of the aggregate, much more uniform, you get almost like a terrazzo-like look. And I have to emphasize that it's a terrazzo-like look. It's not terrazzo. You're not going to have a completely even distribution of aggregate throughout the material, but you definitely will have a much higher level of aggregate reveal and a much more even level of reveal. The mock-up helps you define that for your customer, and I encourage you to do that so that you meet the expectations and avoid any potential hazards on down the line. So that's our Ask the Expert when it comes to K523. Look for more Ask the Expert videos coming forward from the ARDEX Surfaces group in the future. Good luck.